Shalom. I'm Eddie Chumney of Hebraic Heritage Ministries, and we welcome you to this week's Focus Israel Report. In this week's report, we're going to be sharing with you part 3 of an examination of the history of the relationship between the Obama administration and Israel from the viewpoint of Dennis Ross, who was a special advisor to former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton during the Obama administration. And it is as follows. When Obama gave his speech to try to mend ties with the Muslim world in Cairo in 2009, Obama comes to the fourth point of his speech where he talks about democracy. He was trying to draw a distinction from Bush, where he was trying to explain to the Muslim world, we're not going to impose our worldview upon you. We're not going to tell you how your country should be run. And so, until the 2011 Arab Spring, the Obama administration is not promoting democracy in the Muslim world. Suddenly it looks like the forces of history is in the uprising of the people and not in the political systems of the various Islamic countries. And the president wants to stand with the people. So here's where there is a kind of internal tension within the Obama administration between those who feel like we need to be on the right side of history and to stand with the protesters versus those who are saying, look, if we support the protesters against the existing ruling establishment in these various Arab countries, what kind of ruling government are going to replace them? How do we know that we're not creating a political vacuum? And how is that political vacuum ultimately going to be fulfilled? So Ross is asked, so what causes Obama to go to the U.S. State Department and make his speech about the issue? Ross says, the speech doesn't come until May the 19th, 2011. But Obama's speech isn't remembered by him talking about the Arab Spring. It is what he said about the peace process and how he made a reference to Israel returning to the 1967 borders. And Ross is asked, by being an advisor to the president, you couldn't stop him making a reference to the 67 borders? And Ross said, I wasn't trying to stop Obama's reference to the 67 borders. He's asked, you would have kept it, but you would have made it a part as a separate speech. And Dennis Ross says, yes, that is correct. I wanted what he had to say about the peace process separated from the Arab Spring. And Dennis Ross is asked, Obama mentions the 1967 borders. And Dennis Ross replies, yes, Obama mentioned Israel returning to the 1967 borders and the creation of a Palestinian state by an agreement on mutually agreed land swaps with the Palestinians. Ross is asked, so Netanyahu basically comes to the United States at the time Obama is making this speech, and the meetings didn't go well, or did they? What actually happened? And Ross says, when we begin talking about Obama doing a speech, I suggested that we should share the speech with the Israelis. We should give them a draft of the speech in advance, because I feel like if we did this, we could at least get their approval, and we won't surprise Israel. And in effect, basically, if Israel doesn't like what we plan on saying, it will soften their reaction to the speech, and they will be prepared to work with us regarding the issue. And I presented this as one of the meetings that we had at that time. And at the meeting, Obama is there. But Dennis McDonough and U.S. National Security Advisor Susan Rice immediately jump down my throat, and they say, we can't let the Israelis tell us what we're going to say. We can't give them a veto over what we want to do. This is our policy. And that immediately sort of preempts the discussion. To be fair, this kind of viewpoint has existed in every U.S. administration since the days of former U.S. President Harry Truman regarding Israel. There's always been a group of people in the U.S. State Department is either a liability to the United States or Israel does things that causes political challenges to the United States in the Middle East. And they sort of see Israel through this prism. But my viewpoint again is that if we would share with them the draft, even though there's some risk that they will object to it, that Israel will come around and we can better manage the relationship. But if we don't show them the draft, if we cause mistrust, we'll end up seeing that Israel will react in a negative way. And that's exactly what happened. So that gets me to what actually happened in the meeting itself. Before the meeting starts, Obama asked me, why did Netanyahu react so negatively to my speech? And I said, because he was surprised by it and he felt that you put him in a corner and you were trying to jam him him in front of his own constituency before he came here. And I said, had we at least discussed this with him in advance, it would have been different. And when Obama asked Netanyahu the question directly, why did you react so negatively toward my speech? And Netanyahu said to the president, because you didn't coordinate with what you were going to say with us ahead of time. The meeting actually goes pretty well. Obama and Netanyahu have a one-on-one meeting. Obama comes out and he comes over to me when the meeting is over and he says, you are right, we should have coordinated with the Israelis. I felt that had they met the press at that moment, or had they met the press before the meeting, you wouldn't have heard that in the meeting that Netanyahu was lecturing Obama. And Daley is standing next to me. Ross is asked, Obama's chief of staff, Bill Daley. And Ross says, yes. He's standing next to me and he's saying, this is outrageous, simply outrageous. Obama walks Netanyahu out and he comes back. At that point, I wasn't aware that Obama's not happy or in a bad mood, but immediately everyone around him says to him, look what Netanyahu did to you. He lectured you here in your office. It's just outrageous. Ross is asked, after this event in 2011, it does feel a little bit like, given there's a possibility that Obama might not be reelected in 2012, that Obama sort of sets the peace process aside. And if you look at the events of 2012, it was a tough year. The issue of the Iranian nuclear program is coming to the forefront of political discussion. And there's a great deal of tension in the White House regarding how Israel would react to the possibility of Iran having a nuclear bomb. Talk about what those in the Obama administration are thinking. What was happening at that time was Israeli Defense Minister Ehud Barak took the position that Iran was approaching what he called the zone of immunity, where Iran is reaching the point in their nuclear program that it's advancing so far that Israel can't militarily act against it. Within the Obama administration, going back to 2010, there was an internal debate about the language that should be used regarding the issue. And Obama adopted the language of, we're going to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear bomb. But Obama never drew a distinction between prevention and containment until the spring of 2012. And the reason Obama does this is that he wanted to say to Netanyahu, look, Israel doesn't have to attack Iran militarily to stop their nuclear program, because the United States will not permit them to get a nuclear bomb. Dennis Ross is asked, despite the assurances that Obama gave to Netanyahu regarding the Iranian nuclear program that he would not allow them to get a bomb, Obama is taking the occasion of the U.S. presidential year to say that Iran is 6 months to a year from having a bomb, and Israel is wanting the United States to set a red line regarding the issue. And the Obama administration viewed that Netanyahu is supporting the Republican candidate Mitt Romney for president. And Dennis Ross says seemingly. And Ross is asked, only seemingly supporting him, not really doing it? When Israel was questioned about the matter, they would say that they were not supporting Romney. Nevertheless, Obama won re-election in 2012. And Obama feels as though Netanyahu was trying to put the United States in a corner during the election year regarding the Iranian nuclear program. And Dennis Ross explains that at that time he was having conversations with Israel, advising them, why can't you come out and say that you're deferring an Israeli military strike against the Iranian nuclear program as a new Israeli position where it can be seen that you're accommodating Obama even though you feel that it risks Israel's security. And the interviewer says to Dennis Ross, but of course that's not Netanyahu's political style. And Dennis Ross says, indeed, that's not his style, and Israel doesn't take this position. And the interviewer says to Dennis Ross, it seems like it was during 2012 that there truly was a political distance between the United States and Israel. And Dennis Ross replies, I think at that time it was made worse, but after Obama won re-election in 2012, then that's a reason to scale back on things a bit. But I think what increased it was the United States taking a different position in the negotiations toward Iran and their nuclear program. That becomes the real point where you see a divide that becomes harder and harder for Israel and the United States to bridge their differences. And then the differences become more personal because Netanyahu sees the position as, and then I see him on the night of November the 8th, 2013. And the interviewer says to Dennis Ross, on that day you received a telephone call. And Ross replied, I was in Jerusalem because I had been engaging in some informal discussions on the peace process. So I was meeting there and having those discussions. And Netanyahu asked me to come and see him on Friday evening at his prime minister's residence. And when I get there, I have to wait an hour because Netanyahu Netanyahu is speaking with Obama. And this is the day that the joint plan of action, or the interim nuclear deal with Iran, was concluded. So Ross is asked, when you walk into the room, what is it? Did Netanyahu just hang up the phone? And Ross said yes. And Ross is asked, how does Netanyahu view the conversation that he just had with Obama? And Ross says, as many times as I've been around Netanyahu, I've never seen him this way. He wasn't angry. The only way I can describe it is that he was feeling alarmed. Not angry, but alarmed. And the first thing he said to me was, Obama has decided that he has no choice but to do a nuclear deal with the Iranians. U.S. military action against them has been taken off the table. And I said to him, Obama didn't say that to you. And Netanyahu said, yes, he did. And I said to Netanyahu, no, Obama didn't say that to you. And Netanyahu said, yes, he did. And I said to Netanyahu, maybe Obama said to you that the United States has to demonstrate that we've done everything that we could do to resolve the dispute with Iran and the nuclear program through diplomatic means, because rushing to war on the issue would not be politically viable in the United States. But if the diplomatic efforts fail, then it could be justified if we need to act militarily. So Ross said to Netanyahu, maybe that's what Obama really said to you, but there's no way that Obama said that he's taking the military option off the table. However, Netanyahu was convinced that that's what Obama told him. He wasn't convinced that Obama said these exact words, but that's what he interpreted that Obama meant. And as a result, I contacted U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, who was then in Geneva, Switzerland. And I said to him, look, you have a problem here, and it needs to be fixed. And Kerry said, it's not the U.S. position that we've taken the military option off the table. And Ross said to Kerry, I know that's not the U.S. position. And Kerry said, I'll call Netanyahu. And Ross said to him, no, it shouldn't be you. The problem isn't you. The problem is what Netanyahu thinks that Obama said. This could only be fixed by Obama in the White House. And it wasn't. And the interviewer said, you mean Obama in the White House didn't call Netanyahu? And Ross said, Obama in the White House didn't call Netanyahu. And Ross is asked, so far in this interview we've talked about those advisors who at the very beginning of the Obama administration said, in order to change the perception of the Muslim world about the United States, we've got to put some political distance between the United States and Israel. And we've got to try a new approach. And as you look back on it all, what happened? Has it worked? What's the difference with the U.S. relationship with Israel now compared to how it started out in 2009? And Ross answered, the biggest problem that the Obama administration has with Israel is that it's lost the trust of the Israeli public. I think there are a lot of things that Obama could have done on the Iranian issue regarding Israel and on the peace process had he not lost the trust of the Israeli public. But he lost their trust, and that was his single biggest problem. Had he not done that, had he been able to lay out certain positions, the Israeli public would have trusted him more. They would have thought he understands the problems of the Middle East. But that doesn't exist today. And for most of the time of the Obama administration, it has not existed. And this has an effect on our policies toward Israel. And if there was one thing I would have advised Obama differently from the beginning of his presidency, is to tell him, you must focus on getting the trust of the Israeli public. Benjamin Netanyahu once asked me, does Obama think he knows the Israeli public better than I do? So I think this is where Obama went wrong in his approach toward Israel. And he and his administration didn't act soon enough to correct it. Dennis Ross is asked, has this now become a permanent problem? Can it be fixed? And Dennis Ross replied, for Obama, it's too late to change Israeli public opinion regarding him. He can try, but it's not going to work. I don't think this is a permanent problem because of the long-term relationship and friendship that the United States has with Israel. Well, that's going to conclude this week's report, where we shared with you part 3 of our series of examining the history of the relationship between the Obama administration and Israel, this time from the viewpoint of Special Advisor to the Middle East Peace Process, Dennis Ross. Until we do it again, Shalom in Yeshua the Messiah. Amen.